So by saying all this, let me start with the presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Probably what I have to do, and give me just a moment. I want to change probably no, I think I have to stop it first because, or maybe I can do because Anna, I want to change this appearance.
What appearance?
Being the
It's in the
presenter.
top right corner.
Yeah, but I want to, when I start the presentation, I kind of losing this.
But it's okay. You can continue.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let me start. Let me be a little brief, just explaining you. This is not a completely finished work. As I said, our lab acts in different directions. One of the direction is to study digital platforms. And we study the role of not only public, but also private digital platforms. We use example of labor, platforms which help employ people, platforms that find people new tasks and new work, as we can say. Labor market and labor involvement is very important for government. So this group, and you see here me, and it's my PhD student Evgeny, as I said, and also my colleague Natalia Dmitrieva. We study those phenomenons when digital platforms, here on example on labor market, being implemented, and we want to know what is being changed for those people who are using these platforms. And there are thousands, and not saying millions, of these people around the world, and they are using different platforms, and there are very important things which happen with their values during this process. And we think that this is very important process for government, and that government has to manage somehow the change in values when people start using new technologies. So this is not completely different track. It's not just between private platforms and people, but it's also deals with the government and how government can regulate this process. So here is how we think of it. There is a lot of written about public value management in the context of digital technologies in general, more general frameworks. And for us, it's very interesting in this branch of research to study how is this being changed by means of digital platforms. But if we talk more general about this thing, you could see that there are different research being made, and usually it's about how government answers to citizens' requests, in the sense that how government understands or doesn't understand citizen needs and values, because good government projects always correspond to people acceptance, and this is very important thing. And we see that first it was very government-like thing, public value and public value management, but now, due to the fact that a lot of technologies become private and very powerful, government also has to pay attention on how to manage public value. And the fact that new technologies, they do influence public values, but how they influence, needs further research, because the hypothesis would be that the change can happen in both sides, not only to the better, but also to worse. And as you could see from this short scheme, we know that in the earliest works, government was usually seen as the creator of public values, because it meant that very valuable products were like public services, like social care, health care, they were all created by government, which is not completely true right now in the digital era, when private companies can also create additional values to their customers, and their role is so huge that probably governments can also cooperate with private services providers, with private values providers, and achieve certain results. Finally, we know that there are exclusively business-like projects. For example, platforms in education, platforms in healthcare, they're completely private, but that's how they influence the whole industry or the whole sphere. And government also has to pay attention to these changes. One of the ideas related to digital platforms is co-creation. The process when value, now the digital technologies or work on digital platforms, is not only about the fact that only one service provider does create some value for the customer or for the client. It's not completely true. It happens by cooperation of different actors, both in value creation and also in the real result consumptions. So by platform usage, we see that there are a lot of contributors in the chain of value creators. And we see that the interaction between stakeholders becomes very intensive. And this is a real change to a very traditional public value creation, for example, in the mid-90s or in the end of 90s. Very important thing is the way the government can regulate the platforms. We know that usually the private platform, it first appears as a private one, and it has its own scenarios or use cases of development. But the government might consider that not everything is okay with this platform. For example, such things as reputation or rating creation, the entrance threshold, the way the rules needed to implement to enter the platform, the way there is a judgment made or conflict resolution made on the platforms, different possibilities of discrimination which can happen on the platform. This all is in the focus and in the interests of government. So what could be the possible models of regulation? One is very general and traditional, and no one is, of course, neglecting it. It's about the state regulation. It's about legal frameworks. It's about special requirements to the platform holders, to the platform operators, which is a typical legal instrument for any government. But also there could be more lean instruments, such as co-regulation, when the government can be one of the players in the platform, and or could provide some powers of regulation to the private platform operator. Another thing which is also very interesting for government and which can decrease the government burden in regulation is giving a self-regulation, right? When the participants in the certain industry believe or agree that certain platform or platforms perform quite well, and the regulations they use are pretty fair and pretty transparent for all players in the industry, in the market. So this is also a very interesting case and useful for government. Here, in our research, we studied mostly employment platforms. These are international platforms which provide part-time or full-time jobs and help find those who provide job to those who want to implement this job. We know that there is a huge increase in number of these platforms, and you could see how huge it is. Mostly they are divided between platforms that provide delivery. Most of them are delivery platforms. Also, we separately define platforms which are which provide taxi services, and some other platforms, right, which help perform tasks or certain jobs, freelance platforms. These are what we call the web platforms. In 2021, we were collecting data from different platforms across the world. These are mostly private platforms like Amazon Mechanical Turk, Clickworker, Microworker, Toloka, and other platforms, which are popular online labor platforms. The survey was lasting from almost a month in the end of 2021. You see that we have quite huge amounts of data. We have more than 3,200 participants and well, 514 answers were not correct. It means that we have almost 2,700 respondents who completed quite a big research survey. What we know from this survey, you could see that there is a special social demographic profile for platform users. Here is the country range of the people, of the respondents who answered our questions. And you see that it's good that it's not only like from one country, but we have enough respondents from different countries. But it means that the world of labor becomes really global. Like you can find Indians on American platforms. You can find you can find Americans on European platforms, and so on and so on. Mostly when we see here client and customer, it means that mostly clients were those who were trying to implement the jobs, and customers are those who provide the jobs. People, you see that usually the platform becomes the additional space where people could get extra work, extra money, let's say like this. It's 63%, and only 37% are those people who have work only on the digital platforms, which is also quite impressive. Gender is almost equal, and you see there is the distribution between the age. Of course, mostly these are quite young people, which is, I think, quite logical and understandable. Here is the typology of public values that we are using, and we are using the model of public values provided by Bannister and Connolly. The only difference is that they applied this model when it was the time they called it information technologies or information communication technologies. We tried to apply this model to the moment, which is the era of digital platforms, but you could see that the typical public values used are efficiency or cost reduction, cost efficiency, so you get more with using less resources. It's the equal and fair way of competition, and so it's treatment and access. It's about, actually, if you see the self-regulation is pretty high, so it means there is no so much bureaucracy here. Yeah, no much role of government. And that the rules of the platform are pretty acceptable for job providers and job implementers. Effectiveness, customer focus also pretty high. Fairness is rather high. So you could see that there's the distribution of values. I think, of course, these are preliminary results. Of course, this needs to have more thinking of why is like this and how to use this in future. Here you could see that there is the answer to the question about how to build an interaction. And you see that the majority of answers is about blended, like minimum standards or minimum guarantees should come from government, still because it's labor issues. Maybe in some other industry could be different. And then almost 20%, a little bit more than 20% say that there should be direct directive from government, and almost 30% say that the government should not be involved at all. So this is also quite interesting result, saying that still the government has a lot of job to do, and probably there is a kind of request from labor platforms users to have more distinct role from government and establish minimal guarantees. Of course, we are still thinking and we are working on the article on the influence of digital platforms on public values, and we are still in the process. But here you could see some bullets to which we want to address. One is the fact that I mentioned that it's very interesting to see that public value is being created by numerous combinations of platform stakeholders. So you can't even know who made what contribution is made by each of them, because very complex way of creating the public value. Very important thing is the new capabilities of the platforms to find new partners. And it's a question of creating trust environment in which we believe the digital platforms would finally encourage active exchange, adaptation, and shared value creation. But that needs to be proven, but I think it's very important outcome that we can also address to. Finally, you could see that the digital platforms as a new phenomenon becomes the object of regulation by governments, and they become quite independent and influential digital phenomena. And that government pays big attention to different types of platforms. I can just mention that, for example, in Russia, in the labor market sphere, there is a governmental platform which is called Job in Russia. And this is a huge governmental platform which is being used and promoted by government. And like, for example, Russian government believes that this is really a quite effective way to fight unemployment and provide people new working spaces and new jobs. Finally, if we admit the digital platforms become very strong players on the labor market, then there is a need to establish quite sustainable configuration of the partners and regulation between government and platform owners and users. And this is also a subject of the research. So what we want to do, right, is our next steps, and what we are, our thoughts in this group is about what is changing, right? What public values are changing and how they are changing for users. It's about finding the different models of regulations for the platforms, And also, it's interesting to see how the public value is being created, by what configuration of platform stakeholders is going to be done. And finally, it's how different political, social factors influence platform development in different countries, and what's the balance and prioritization. And that's why in this project, we researched platforms in different countries, and we addressed different groups of citizens. So with this, I want to finish and say that this is one of the directions of the lab we are doing within digital platforms. We also, just to finalize, I will mention that we also think of economical transactions on the platforms, and we don't present it here, but yes, there is another direction, is to trying to understand the expenses and economic values of efficiency, effectiveness on being presented on digital platforms. With this, I want to stop.
Thank you very much, Evgeny. So, dear colleagues, if you have any questions, please ask.
Yes, I would like to say something.
Sure.
Yes. Firstly, thank you, Professor Steering, to having us here. I think it's a really good initiative to be in this conference, to share and collaborate to in this kind of project, because we are interested in digital gov, in transformation, in public administration, in this kind of topic. So related, the presentation, I think was very clear to understand every point you explained. I think it's a very pertinent, important topic in this moment to analyze this kind of platforms, and the scope you make to put the zoom in the user in this service, I think is also appropriate for the analysis. So when I see the results and your conclusion about, I was thinking about the aspect of public value, because you try to put the result in the theory of public value, but I think in the different aspect of the public value we can find I think diversity of the things good and bad in respect to public value, because all I think it's obviously this kind of platform is more effective, more efficient, and also we can say that it stimulates the co-creation. But on the other hand, I think other aspect of the public value really important, as trust and legitimize the action. There are no very good aspect in this kind of platform, because we can think in the labor condition of the employees, of the control of the platform over the users, that maybe this is not important, this is not good for the legitimate. So my reflection is about, maybe you can clarify me, that was really accurate to put this analysis in public value focus, in public value theory, but inside of public value we can find good aspect, but also really bad aspect in this kind. This is my reflection, because we can say what Rasul said, that there is some lack in the use of platform. Also, regulation of the government is pretty important in this issue. And as a new topic, and the platform are not very good regulate in a lot of countries, we can find there is abuse of this kind of company in this issue. So I don't know what is your reflection about the beyond the result. What is your reflection about the platform in topic of public value? So thinking in public value in the side of the efficient and co-creation and this aspect, but the other and trust, legitimize and regulation. So what you can put in trade-off of this aspect? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe I'm not completely understand the question, but how I understood it, I try to answer you the following way. As I said, we have two tracks right now in this project based on the collected data. One is public value and one is, let's call it economic value, economic transactions on the platform. We were thinking, how would you ever create the government regulation of the platforms? And what should be your guide? What should be your final goals? And because it's public administration, we decided that the simplest thing and probably most understandable thing, and which is related to the academic literature, there is a lot of academic literature on public values. We thought that if it's about a good governance in the different industries, and if these industries go and change due to the implementation of platforms, for example, I can mention the taxi in Russia. The platforms taxi platforms completely changed the market. It's a complete movement like to the new era. It was a complete mess before the platforms came. They came and taxi platforms created quite strict, quite understandable rules. Of course, there are some issues inside, but in general, it's like a new world actually. And the world was accepted by users. But from a government perspective, it's interesting to have the final targets of this. And we decided that public value would be a very, very logical way of thinking in regulation, because what is the final goal of regulation? It's to make life of people better rather than worse. You have to create the laws, legal frameworks and changes so that people in general, citizens, win from using digital products created by digital platforms. And if I continue the example with the taxi platform, first I think it was a complete shock. It was real, how to say, surprise for government authorities that taxi can work like this. That here is a new algorithm. It calculates you the directions. It calculates your prices. You choose the standards and quality of this service, the service being controlled by platform operator. This is completely new world. But then when the taxi platform was exploiting for some time, people and authorities understood that there were also some problems with this platform. Not everything was clear. There were some problems with hiring people who worked in this area. So the government decided to go in its general way, and change some legal framework for regulating the taxi market. But these changes were made, in keeping in mind that the life completely changed. No one said, let's stop these platforms. Let's finish this. Let's come back to previous times. No, the profits and effectiveness of this was so huge. So again, trying to conclude and answer your question, I think that this public value is something which is like as I said, like a final goal for government to perform the regulation, and could be a very good mark together with economic dimension. But unfortunately, we don't have the presenter with the economic. She is still working on the economics of platforms. It's not so simple. It's about the different types of expenses. But of course, this is also interesting dimension. So as I said, this is such a project. We think that we can really relate ourselves to a huge amount of literature on public value, and we think that digital platforms contribute to it. And as I think there's a strong part of this project is the fact that we collected data from all over the world. So we're going to write some truly international paper, and we believe that it could be interesting to the readers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for presentation and thank you for comments. If there are no other questions or comments to Evgeny, I think we shall move to the next participants. And as Evgeny said, we would be really grateful if you would introduce yourself
Yes.
in the beginning of the presentation. So what we have found out, correct me if I'm wrong, you're working at the University of Guadalajara, right? At the Center for Administrative Economic Science. And so you're interested in artificial intelligence in the public sector and open data, e-government, yeah, social networking. If you could be more specific, so please introduce yourself and welcome to our conference.
Thank you, Ine. So firstly, I will say thank you everyone for being this conference in this online space to try to share. We are really interesting, as you say, Professor, steering in collaborate in projects in academic, because I can see that we are interested in the same academic topics. So also we are part of the eLab, like the head is Rodrigo Sandoval. That I don't know why he's not here, but we hope he joins us soon. So I know you are part of the important lab, the International Laboratory for Digital Transformation in Public Administration. So we are interested to collaborate in this order. So Victor, please, you can share the presentation. So Victor and I, we are conducting research science in the University of Guadalajara. University of Guadalajara is the second largest university in Mexico. It's really big university. So we are part of the center, University Center in Economic and Administrative Science. That is, in this center, we are in focus on public policy. So I'm professor of the Department of the Public Policy, and my colleague, Victor Garcia, he's doing his PhD candidate in the doctoral program in public policy. So we are happy to conduct this kind of research because we are interested in the topic of artificial intelligence in public sector. So in this case, we want to share with you recent research that also is unfinished. Also, we can find preliminary findings, but I think is relevant in this moment around the world. So we are, this presentation is entitled The Analysis of the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy in Mexico from the Ethics and Human Rights Perspective. So firstly, I would like to say that we are analyzing more than only the national strategy artificial intelligence in Mexico. We are interested in other countries. We also are conducting research and other paper and articles related to comparing different countries in this aspect. But in this case, we want to share only the aspect we find in Mexico, but also is interest for us. And and you say the ethics and human rights are very, very important topics because they have important concerns about the use of artificial intelligence. Mainly we can find that example like the cameras, public cameras that controlling by the government to watch over the people, the focus is to control a little bit the crime. That in this aspect, another aspect, we can say the platform that are controlling a lot of aspect of the peoples, that also the social network are not regulate, and the government, there is a fight between companies and government trying to find about the controlling and regulation of the social network, no, as Twitter, as Facebook, and this kind of platform. But in this aspect, we can find very important concern about ethics and human rights. So in this research, we put the focus on analyze the national strategy that it's important to say that not all the countries has this kind of strategies or big policy in national, but in some we can find this kind. So please, Victor, next one. As part of introduction, because my colleague Victor also will continue the presentation, I can stand out some important issues. So in general, we can say that artificial intelligence is a very, very important issue right now. The artificial intelligence has the potential to change a lot of things. So in this way, we can see that the public sector, that the government, are very interesting in this topic. So, but they are also a lot of problems to adopt this kind of technology, because they don't have the human source, they don't have technology, they don't have the expertise in this topic. But the artificial intelligence is now in the societies, now in the companies, is now affecting the people. So the government can not be indifferent to this phenomenon, to try to track and try to regulate, try to orientate this kind of technology. So follow this idea, we can say that a lot of public administration, mainly in national level, are creating and generate plans, project, policy, and national strategy to address this important point, no? Artificial intelligence. And we can find a lot of issues in this kind of plans, in this kind of strategy. We can find different vision that the government try to put in these plans. And also we are trying in this research, we want to put a focus in aspect or human rights and ethicals, because I think it's important basis to generate other things. So in this, please, the next one, Victor. Just to finish my intervention, I would like to say what was the research question, the guide or research, and the question is, what are the characteristics and elements of the national strategy in terms of ethics and human rights in Mexican case, in national Mexican case? The object for this research is analyze the characteristics and elements of this national strategy, mainly or put focus in ethics and human rights approach in Mexico. So my colleague, Victor, we will continue to doing this presentation. Go ahead, Victor.
Thank you, Doctor. Hello, good day, everyone. I would like to continue with the presentation of our work on the analysis of the national strategy of artificial intelligence in Mexico from the perspective of ethics and human rights, presenting some data of the review of the literature and done of work. As Professor mentioned, the government is one of the sectors that has been interested in implementing artificial intelligence in different sectors of the society. Let me check. For example, in terms of security, transportation, health, and justice, to name a few. In the public sector, artificial intelligence has transformed the storage, organization, and analysis of government information using different artificial intelligence systems and applications for the provision of government service. Some examples of the transformation of government service are communication with the citizen, the way of the storing data, and the platform to carry out the procedures online. Among the artificial intelligence applications that have been implemented in the public sector are data processing, robotics, and cybersecurity, to mention a few. These applications and systems have been implemented in the public sector with different policies. An example of artificial intelligence public policy are national strategies, which are seen as a platform for the organization and development of the artificial intelligence in country. Some examples of the countries that have a national intelligence strategies are United States, China, Japan, Spain, United Kingdom, France, Germany, Argentina, and Uruguay. The strategies have a series of activities and government actions to accomplish the objectives and achieve the goal sets. The countries focus mainly on the research and development and the creation of the regulatory frameworks and investments in tools with artificial intelligence. In the literature, we find that ethical consideration and human rights are important elements to creation to artificial intelligence public policies, because the implementation of this technological development, in spite of its autonomy and learning capacity, are built by the people following instructions. The adoption of artificial intelligence systems and an application related to privacy, transparency, platform management, and decision making with artificial intelligence has generated a variety of social, ethical, and legal conflicts. And therefore, governments must implement different methods and algorithms to integrate moral, social, and legal values through the process of creating of AI applications. In the case of national AI strategies, ethics can be defined as a self-reflection of the use of AI in the public sector. In addition, ethics is considered a discipline that analyzes reflects on the rules, norms, and values that guide the society. A fundamental element of national AI strategies is the protection of human rights. This must be understood as universal rights that correspond to are inherent to everyone human being. This means that the AI application adopted in transportation, health, education, security, and entertainment must be introduced in a way to consider the ethical elements to society and respect the human rights. The methodological strategy of the research is based on exploratory and descriptive study of artificial intelligence public policies. In the following table, you can see the categories and elements of analysis. In the first, the country we analyze is Mexico. Our object of the study are the national strategies of artificial intelligence. Based on what was mentioned in the literature review, we identified two dimensions of the study. The first is ethics, and the second is the human rights. The documents that we analyzed are the national strategies projects in Mexico. We located two documents. The first document is the report towards an AI strategy in Mexico, taking advantage of the AI revolution. This document prepared by Oxford Insights and the company SeaMinds. This document has a series of recommendations for the development of a national strategy of artificial intelligence. And the second document is the Mexican National Agenda for Artificial Intelligence. That document is prepared by an organization that is made of different experts in the field of artificial intelligence that belong to different public and private organizations. Finally, we find that national artificial intelligence strategies have a common or similar elements and characteristics, which we define as categories of analysis for this research. The first category is the objectives of the strategies. The second category is the principles, which make up a series of ideas, values, and norms that guide the elaboration of the strategy. And the third category is the access and actions. These contemplate the specific topics and activities that are proposed to be achieved. And the fourth category is the vision and goals. Now, we present the results of the analysis of the national strategies of artificial intelligence in Mexico from the description and explanation of the dimension of ethics and human rights from each of the one categories of analysis. For example, objectives, principles, access and actions, vision and goals. This allows to give a timely to answer our research question and to achieve our goal. Regarding the implications with an ethical approach, the ethics is an important and relevant element with developing and establishing the different activities to implement AI in the public sector. The ethics is considered a fundamental pillar for the implementation of AI as a decision-making tool. The documents contemplate the ethical challenge in terms of security, connectivity, and inclusion. Ethics is a part of the objectives, vision, and goals of national strategies with an ethical framework that supports decision-making with the use of this technological development. In addition, the documents propose the establishment of our ethical basis for the mitigation of social, environmental, and economic risk that the implementation of AI implies. In the case of the principles that governs document, ethics plays a fundamental role in the formulation, considering justice, data protection, privacy, and transparency as ethical principles. In relation to the access and action, the documents on ethics, the documents propose the creation of an AI ethics council in Mexico and the generation of AI conference with topics such as ethics. regarding the implication of a human rights approach in terms in human rights. The documents indicate that the strategies must be promoted through the development of a broad legislative framework that contemplate the different rights of the individuals that maybe protect the implementation of the AI. Identifying in the documents that one of the benefits of human rights as a main feature of the implementation of AI is the specific establishment of the obligations and responsibilities of the rulers, as well as considering the mechanisms to resolve possible conflicts with human rights. An objective of AI strategy is development and implementation of AI must protect and respect human rights. Another objective of the strategies is that the adaptation of artificial intelligence must be harmonized with the legal framework to generate trust with the citizens. The AI strategies consider human rights as guiding principles. The documents establish the protection of freedoms, the preservation of security, the promotion of equality and justice. The human rights have a fundamental role in the access and actions of AI strategies, forming part of the legislation or regulation of this technological development. The strategy action regarding human rights in the documents include the creation of the specialist independent body for defense and custody of human rights with the support with the different sectors of society. Well, in conclusion, we consider that in spite of the fact that Mexico is considered the first country to initiate actions to implement artificial intelligence in the country, with the report towards an AI strategy in Mexico, taking advantage of the AI revolution and the Mexican national agenda for artificial intelligence. But there are currently no efforts or action to public or private organizations to continue with the creation of a national artificial intelligence. Therefore, the implementation of AI systems, application, and tools in the country can be considered as isolated actions that do not have a solid base that regulates and gives certainty to society about the positive and negative implication of the adoption of AI. In addition, we identified that artificial intelligence actions and projects in the public sector are only carried out in certain states or municipalities of the country without coordination with other federal, state, or municipal entities. Regarding the analysis of the ethical and human rights dimensions of the agenda and the report, it is noted that these elements are fundamental and essential part of the formation and creation of the different elements that are part of AI strategies. Emphasizing the ethical considerations in the documents, analyze a fundamental part and transversal axis for the generation of policies, norms, strategies, and action for the implementation of AI. In the categories of analysis, ethics is part of the definition of the objectives and goals of the principles that govern the strategies of the action and activities that are intended to carry out with the use with this technological development. And in terms of human rights, we find that the AI strategies strengthen them together with the normative, ethical, and legal framework and respect the human rights. The present work has areas of opportunity to depend in the investigation regarding the national AI strategies in Mexico, considering new documents by the different sectors of society in the field of artificial intelligence. in addition to expanding the analysis from the ethical and human rights perspective. Finally, the study of AI strategies is important and relevant to empirical file of AI to analysis in the public sectors. Since this kind of research allows us to understand how to regulate and establish the action to implement the different artificial intelligence application in all the sectors of society. Thanks for your attention. We appreciate your comments, and it's a pleasure to be at this pleasure conference. And we appreciate the invitation and hope to meet again.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So, dear colleagues, have you any questions? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I can ask one. Yeah, thank you so much for your presentations, Edgar and Victor. It was very interesting, and it was a pleasure to see this presentation because there is a lot of work being done in the same direction in many countries. For example, we in Russia have analyzed, we also have our Russian national artificial intelligence strategy. And we also have some work done in analyzing it. And when we say analyzing it, what should we do? We do it in comparative manner. We compared our strategy with the same strategies in other countries. And again, we were not the first to do so. In other countries, they do the same. They do benchmark strategies. So my question would be to you, how would you, in terms of ethics in the strategy, how would you place Mexico as it is for now? Is there enough ethics in Mexican strategy, or could be more? Is this ethics more to business, to citizens, to companies, to the processes of data collection? Like, I'm asking, what are the specifics in Mexican strategy, written by authors? Because in each country, we found its own specifics in ethics. So what's specific in Mexico? What is most attention? To what is most attention being paid?
Yes, Professor. Thank you for your question. So I think it's a good point. We can find that in terms of ethics, in the documents, we can read, and the document reflect important concern and put attention in terms of ethics. However, in the practice, I think the government don't assume this kind of ethics. And also, important point is that the actually government has no interest in this element, in artificial intelligence strategy. These don't have plans right now. The document we take was the government before, and right now, because the government doesn't put attention in this topic, was the private sector, as social civil organization that make the new strategy. So this, we can see that in documents, we can find a lot of interest in ethics and human rights, but in the practice, we cannot be referenced. So since this point, we can see that the documents point principal attention in ethics in terms of data protection. Yes, because in Mexico, in other countries also, has a tendency also to protect personal data, protect the identity of the citizen. So we already have a lot of law in this kind of topics. So in this strategy, the people and also the civil society organization are putting the focus in protection the data, because as we know, in artificial intelligence, work with big data, with data, and also the problem that the companies or also the governments make bad use of this kind of data could be a problem. So I can answer this as your question, Professor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Edgar. Understood. So it's mostly about data protection, personal data protection, and that it's not so good to steal the data or to put it to the third party. This understood. But by the way, in Russia, for example, this been done by a special legal act about Data Protection Act. We have,
Yes.
like in many other countries.
Yes.
Then the question is, I mean, it's not that I'm questioning you right now, but it's just my reflection that this is a question: should it be ethical or should it be legal? Because it seems like it's not an ethical problem in the sense that there is a typical legal dimension of this problem. And if you steal data, or if you sell data, or if you bring data to the third party, there are typical legal consequences for this. And it's stop being an ethical question dimension, and it becomes completely legal. So there is a very small border between legal and ethical. And my second question would be, it's like it's an attempt to make not a question, but maybe a small task. Imagine, Professor, if you write a comparative paper on artificial intelligence ethics in different countries, what should be the outline? Because I'm asking this, so maybe think about it after our meeting today. If there is such an interest, I mean, if you have a certain framework, because we've done a lot of work on this. Unfortunately, we've done it in Russian. And for sure, there is no interest to publish in English just Russian version of AI ethics. But in case you have or you developed a comparative framework, and maybe there is an interest to collect, I mean, this should be, I believe this is interesting in scientific dimension, in academic dimension, because in practical dimensions, we know a lot. My students started doing this comparative work already 3 years ago. One of them was working in Ministry of Economic Development in Russian Federation, and he was responsible for artificial intelligence national project in Russia. So he was comparing ethics in many countries. So in applied sense of it, in practical sense, we know quite a lot about differences in each country. For example, we know that there is a French approach to artificial intelligence. It has very specific emphasis on, I think it's on science and research. There is Japanese approach to artificial intelligence ethics. It deals with some other issues. There is a German approach, but my question, or my proposal to think maybe for future collaboration is what should be the academic model, academic dimension of this comparison. Because again, in practical way, civil servants ask us, so why are we special here? Are we special in Russia? Are we better or worse? You know, like when they start writing a strategy, they also read something, you know, like when they wanted to make a Russian artificial intelligence strategy, they read the strategies which were before, you know, it was not the first strategy. I mean, they read American one, they read Japanese one, and they created their own. What is interesting still is that each country has its own specifics. Yours, for example, is on personal data, as you said. For example, in Russia, there is a lot of being told how to work with data for the companies, for example. Very, very specific, I think a very good achievement in Russian case. But don't ask me why. I don't know. I don't know why one country succeeds in certain part of ethics and another country chooses another one. Probably it's related to some cultural issues. Maybe it created to the political regimes, maybe not. It could be questionable. But Professor, if you will continue a comparative dimension of this, you can keep us in mind, because again, we did a lot of work about this at least in Russia. We also did some comparative things. Again, we don't believe that our comparative things could be published as they are. No. But if you find interesting academic dimension for comparison, I propose we can try and try to participate in it, maybe fill in something. So could be discussable, because we wrote, like, the last thing I'm saying again, because a lot of happens, because in such big countries like Russia, Mexico, China, Brazil, a lot of things happen in their national language, and this happen in the national scale. And this is understandable, because this is your strategy for your country. It's interesting for your people, for its internal use for this. The same here. People and researchers discussed the practical dimension of this strategy, and I can tell you that Russia implements national projects, which is called artificial intelligence. It's part of digital economy project. So it's actually a big project with some budget. So things are being done. Of course, now maybe could be some changes, but the project exists. So I have to stop here, because I know that Professor Sandoval has to make his presentation already, but yes. I'm just, as to conclude.
Just 1 minute to try to answer your
sure, it's very
question. Firstly, the reflection you say about between legal and ethics, I think both topics should be combined, because the legal have to be based on an ethics. There is no always in this goal the things in this way. Yes, sometimes the legal things have no ethical issues, but the aspiration is the legal things adopt ethical concern. And the other hand, you say about the problem that you said could be the national or international comparative in this kind of analysis. I think your vision is more advanced, but I think we have to take this research step by step. What I can say with this, I say that this first approach and this methodological strategy we propose can be adapted in international way to compare different strategy in the first approach, and followed by this approach, we can pass the set level, as you say. So consider the context, the language, the actors, the other characteristics we can consider in this kind of a strategy to make a good comparison. So I think we can go step by step to continue this. I think you share a good vision to future research in this interesting topic. So thank you, and I will stop to make to present to my head of my lab, the Professor Sandoval Almazan.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we are approaching to the final part of our first day of the conference. And so I pass the word to Professor Rodrigo Sandoval, who is a professor at the Faculty of Political and Social Sciences of the Autonomous University of the State of Mexico. And his presentation, at least it sounds really like the summing up and at the same time as setting up the agenda of the data-driven government studies. It is the metaverse challenges for public administration. So thank you very much for attending the conference, and we are pleased to hear you here.
Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you, Evgeny. Welcome you all. This is a rainy morning here in Mexico, well, in Toluca, Mexico. I mean, we're just waking up. I know that you are in more than half a day. Anyway, can you give me permission to share my screen, because I cannot share and I have my presentation.
I already gave it. You have it, Rodrigo.
Uh,
You should try.
yeah, but I can't. I can't do it.
Really? No, it tells me that, I mean, you have this permission. Several participants can do it. So
Well, allow me.
or if you
No, I don't know. I don't know why. Edgar, can I send you my presentation and
you can send it to me. And
In the bottom of the screen, you can now see the share screen or compartir pantalla, Rodrigo.
Yes, I can see it, but when I do sharing screen,
Okay.
it gives me some warnings that I cannot share.
because Edgar was able to show, Edgar and Victor could
Yes.
able to show the presentation, so it works
Yes.
somehow.
But if you can, Rodrigo, you can send me and can share for you.
I think I can do it. It asks me some.
So what we can do, you just send to one of us, to me or to Anna, doesn't matter. We will open it.
Yeah, I need to go out for a second and come back. Just wait a minute.
Okay.
Technical issues.
That's okay. We are here, you know, in small
Okay,
company.
so while we have a pause, Edgar, may I ask you and Victor to send us your presentation? You can do it in chat or via email. I mean the
Yes,
slides.
of course.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We have to make a report for us. It's
Yes.
very important. Yeah,
Yes.
we will.
And you can share your email and can send you
Okay.
the presentation.
But I think it is also important for all the other participants because they will be able to review the talks and maybe find some collaboration issues. I didn't get anything yet.
But again, while we are waiting for Rodrigo, I can say that mostly for our Mexican colleagues is that we have in the lab, we have such a group of, inside the lab, we have a group of people who are studying, we call the conference data-driven governance. But what is this? This is all about the artificial intelligence issues in government, right? They are all based on data. So I mean, the ethical dimension we also study, but as I said, perfect. As I said, we had a lot of materials in Russian. So in any case, we can move, you know, to some visible international publication. We are more than ready. Rodrigo, we can see the presentation. So the floor is yours.
Okay, fortunately it works. Well, thank you very much for this short time. Well, I'm wondering if you know about the metaverse. Well, this is a strange word that is very recently online. And well, I have thinking a lot about how this idea of the metaverse could change the public sector. So I prepared this presentation of challenges and perspectives. Of course, those are main preliminary ideas. We can discuss it, but well, I want to share it for a few minutes, and then maybe we have some time to discuss it. Well, I want to start with this phrase of an author that there will be not a before and after metaverse. Instead, it will emerge slow and show different product services and capabilities, integrate and merge. And I think that is the truth, because the metaverse, it becomes in my opinion, an evolution of the internet. Maybe we don't want it. Maybe we want to stay focused in the era that we have right now, that we can share thoughts, looking each other like this, and with a physical contact in a conference or visiting Russia or Mexico. But the reality is that the digital life is upon us. So according to this, let's go deep into the concept of metaverso. And well, this concept, it comes from 1992. It starts with a novel called Snow Crash, in which his protagonist is Jairo, and he defeats the real world enemies into an avatar. But this author, Neil Stephenson, take this concept from Williamson, the novel Neuromantia, 1984. So the concept is far away, but is on the past century. But right now is, I think there is the technology that allows the opportunity to exploit this concept. If you are not as young as I can see in the screens, maybe Evgeny and somebody else know about this, but we live in the era of the Sims family, or the era of Second Life. And this Second Life, it was something like the metaverse, what it can be right now, because it was a virtual world in which you have to download almost a server, and the persons interact like an avatars. In that time, in the 1990s, that was huge. I mean, and that was huge because it was impossible to download a complete server or a 1 terabyte using the telephone line connection for using internet. So, I mean, it takes days maybe to download all of that. But right now, the engines and all of these make us the possibility to build a new perception of this world in which we can interact as persons in the digital era. So there are different meanings. I want to start with this, with the meanings. For some users and for some techniques, I forget this, I skipped the N at the title. They think that the metaverse is the online presence. Okay, this is a complete online presence, immersion, a total immersion of the people inside a different world. This also has to be with interoperability, because this immersion, in order to happen, it has to be in the cell phone, it has to be in the computer, it has to be in the screens at the kitchen. So everywhere we need to have this same program or same software that allow us to interact with the other people completely immersed. And this is, of course, it goes with standardization. So everything of the standards of metaverse, it has to happen in all the countries. The standardization of the different software and the different codes, it has to be in order to have a common ground in which we can share video and audio. And of course, this is a business focused industry. I mean, everything is to try to make business, to try to make money, and all of this. The other perspective is to have a virtual world, just to build a virtual world as we imagine, to build a virtual reality. I'm sorry about this, a virtual reality in which we can understand the life as living with others in other circumstances, no time frames, no limits, no any boundaries. And this allows us to increase our social networking. because we are going to share our thoughts and our different hobbies with people from Europe, from Asia, from Latin America, from North America, whatever, because we are in the same ground, in the same space that it calls the metaverse. And the other characteristics is the persistence. I mean, this metaverse means that all the time we are going to be immersed and we are going to be acting, and behavior is going to be inside this world. And finally, according to Benford, he says that all of this is going to happen, but also we are going to maintain the connection with the real world. I mean, we can go inside this virtual world, but also we can have the connection with the real world. In other words, we are going to live between worlds, between one world and the other world. And this is a challenge for the government, at least on my humble perspective. So the first thing that I can see is something that is called right now the public verse. And the public verse is just an environment, of course, in the metaverse, but for the public administration. So this metaverse is a layer in which we can establish some kind of cybersecurity, interoperability, a common ground for different agencies and different countries inside a country or different countries, in which we can provide some levels of interaction with citizens or business partners in a digital environment. This also guarantees the security, maybe the anonymity, data sharing, all the characteristics that we can have, and we can use, I mean, the expectation is that we can use blockchain in order to produce this public verse. There is another complementary idea that it calls the Fediverse, and this concept is about federated and universe. And this Fediverse is something like this decentralized web in which we can have completely different applications to interact in the metaverse, different applications rather than the ones that has in the Western side, like Twitter or Facebook. Here, the Fediverse proposed Mastodon, Diaspora, Hopzilla, and PeerTube as a complement of this. Well, this is the first step. The second step is that the metaverse is conceived as a metaverse for countries or governments. So, well, the best example is Seoul in Korea. They plan to have this government and this country to have its own metaverse for the next year. And as we can see in the picture, well, actually there is a virtual city hall right now, operating right now, in which they can meet avatars with public officials. And these avatars can solve any complaints, any questions about services, online services, all of that in their own metaverse. Well, we can say that a private metaverse is not correct, because the metaverse intends to be a common ground for everyone else that has to be the access to do this. But this is one of the main categories. The other is public service. The other idea is public service, but without contact. And this means also in Korea is that we can try to make this extension of the COVID-19, and we can allow people to enter the metaverse in order to have public service, in order to gain a new communication channel with the government, and they have in this communication channel another opportunity to interact with the government. The Seoul government, for example, treat COVID-19 patients using a government app that monitors their health and give some video access to the doctor. And some other several local governments launch the artificial intelligence bots to help to self-isolated people for different reasons, not only for health reasons. So these are the perspectives. The other perspective is precisely the privacy and the democracy impact in the metaverse inclusion. This is a problem because the metaverse intends to be a place in which we can share everything, in which we share our hobbies, or knowledge, or education, or research. So it kinds like privacy is lost. And if the privacy is lost and the metaverse knows everything about us, what happened with the democracies? Because the political campaigns are going to be aware about all our ideological predilections or ideas or point of views or free will or free speech, because we are inside these platforms. So, and they can use this information to manipulate the voters in authoritarian regimes or any other ideological frame. So one of the problems is how can we deal with this metaverse inclusion and the democracy? So these are the perspectives, the 4 perspectives that I can show you. And now let's see some specific challenges for the public sector. And with that, I will finish my presentation. The first challenges, in my opinion, is the power of technology to increase the surveillance state. Of course, the new components mandatory of any metaverse are facial recognition, pupil observation, because with the cameras, they can see our pupils in our eyes. This concentration of aspects besides the behavior during our stay in the metaverse are going to be saved, classified, analyzed in the metaverse. So this surveillance is important to understand what is going to happen. How can we balance or counterbalance this kind of surveillance? It is clear that one of the leaders of this is Facebook, now Meta, precisely to change the name into the metaverse in order to Facebook last year make it clear that they are sharing information about pictures, faces, and that Facebook is used for human trafficking using their Instagram application that damage, in this case, teenage girls. Okay, so the question here for the governments or the public administration is how to control this power in the metaverse, how to control the impact of Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, or whatever into these concepts. The second challenge, or the great challenge, is the economy. If this metaverse creates a complete new industry of devices to access the metaverse, of products and services like virtual territories, goods and services, the thing here is how to regulate the ownership in the metaverse. How to define what becomes your property. It will be defined by countries. It will be defined by a whole worldwide leader or regulator of the metaverse. The other question is if the metaverse generates value, how to accumulate, to decide this value, how the government can charge on taxes using this value, how to accumulate this value safely, that is not from criminals or that is not from bad sources. So finally, how the government will determine this value, if the government is the responsible or is the leader of this idea. So I think that economy is another challenge that we need to think about. The third challenge for the government or the public administration is the content creation. And content creation in the metaverse is key aspects. I think is the heart of the metaverse. In order to be part of the of this interaction, online interaction, content has to be inside. It has to be updated. It has to be created. So it's not enough just to sell the products or to sell the content. It is necessary to attract the customers, to attract the users, and to maintain the users' attention inside the metaverse. In other words, this immersion that we have right now with Facebook, for example, that is a complete immersion from the young people and from everybody else, in the metaverse, it will increase. So content creation, it has to be important. It has to be a key role on this. So how can we moderate this content creation? How can we decide, or censorship, if it is the case, which contents are allowed and which content must be happening in the metaverse that protects the freedom, that protects the freedom of speech, the liberties, that protects the rights of the different audiences with different ideologies, with different beliefs. If there is a need of a regulator or a government or a regulation that moderates the content creation in the metaverse. And if it can punish or if it can make some sanctions to the companies that present the content. So that is, in my opinion, some of the problems. Another one is that this metaverse, as we know right now, that we know at this point the promise of a metaverse, because right now very few people are inside the metaverse and acting as one part of this new trend. But the real thing is that the metaverse is altering, modifying the actual technological platforms. Is modifying the streaming, is modifying the competition between the largest competitors like Alphabet, Google, like Meta, like Alibaba, like any other competitors in the world. And these competitors want a piece of that cake that we call the metaverse. They are going to fight to remain in the mind of the consumers. So how we control this integration with other platforms? In my opinion, we are going to see radical changes, and we are seeing this right now in the different platforms like Telegram, Clubhouse, TikTok, WhatsApp, I'm sorry, that are changing their business models in order to adapt to the metaverse. So one of these leaders that needs to change in the world is the government. We need to interact with all of these applications and with these new challenges in the metaverse world. So we need to decide how the government will interact, control, or regulate this problem in order that to have a fair competition or to respect the rights of the different users on the different platforms. And of course, the last but not least challenge is the bureaucracy in the metaverse. It has to be a mind changer, is a game changer also about the digital bureaucracy that maybe we can have right now against the virtual bureaucracy. Okay, the digital bureaucracy are the people that are behind a screen, a computer, trying to produce some systems to allow online tax payments, to allow some user services online. And we have on the other side, the virtual democracy, that everything is going to happen in the metaverse. So these two worlds can balance each other. These two worlds has to be faced. Is going to be a resistance from the different kinds of bureaucracies. Is going to be a change about this. How are the safeguards, the limitations, the boundaries between these two bureaucracies? Who will prevail? The virtual bureaucracy, the metaverse bureaucracy, or the digital bureaucracy? And on the other side of the coin, in the same topic of bureaucracy, are the metaverse public risks. So if this is a new world, so we are pioneering. We have large space for organized crime and terrorism in the metaverse. So the government has to be aware about this. It has to be smart government to understand the risk, to understand the uses of the metaverse for committing some crimes or for making terrorist acts. And this is side by side with the complete absence of cybercrime legislation into the metaverse. There's nothing about this. There are very few people that is thinking how to deal with this, but we're going to be immersed in a very few time, maybe a couple of years or so, inside this metaverse, inside this new interaction platform for the government and for the society. So in order to finish, Benford, this is another author that have some research about metaverse. He says that what kind of metaverse do we want to create? Who should create? And how to regulate it? But I wonder if we have the power to control the metaverse. Or do we go further and let the metaverse to control, manipulate us? So, well, that are the questions. So I will be very happy to interact with you and to understand what do you think about these crazy ideas. Maybe I am too crazy or too advanced, but thank you very much, Evgeny, for letting me to share these thoughts with your audience and your research center. And well, let's talk about it.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. So, dear colleagues, do you have any questions or comment to this very philosophical and future-oriented presentation?
Maybe my colleagues could say something. It would be nice. Any questions, comments from us? Somebody?
Maybe you are tired. It was a very hard day and I was the last presenter, so I'm so sorry.
Actually, I have a question. So it touches upon the bureaucracy topic that you're talking about. So I don't know, as long as there is a bureaucracy discourse in public administration, there is always kind of a critical bureaucracy that it is not like the ideal type of government. And when the network, the metaverse began to appear, the network governance was considered as a possible opportunity to bureaucracy. It was often said that for contemporary society, for contemporary people, for contemporary citizens, bureaucracy is not the proper type of governance. So at the same point, you suggest like the introduction to bureaucracy into the network-based metaverse, as far as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong. So how they will deal with each other? So is it possible to join them, to connect them, or it will be like the hierarchical mode? So how do I understand the reasons why you suggest to implement it, but how it is possible to combine those different types of governance?
Thank you, Anna. It's a very good question. Interesting insight. On my opinion, the bureaucracy, it has a lot of historical changes. I mean, from the Middle Ages to the actual world, bureaucracy has changed a lot. It has suffered some kind of evolution. In my opinion, the evolution that transformed bureaucracy is technology. I mean, in the Middle Ages, we have to do it by hand or by stones to see which person has to pay taxes. And then comes the writing and the books, and then comes another infrastructure. And nowadays we have the computers. So the metaverse will be a game changer for bureaucracy. I think that bureaucracy has to adapt. Maybe it's a wrong approach. It will be mandatory or forced to adapt to the metaverse. If most of the citizens ask for public managers in the metaverse, the bureaucracy has to open front door and says, well, we are going to receive some claims, some taxes here in this window or in this building, this virtual building, and we're going to do it. Because the bureaucratic mindset doesn't work unless the citizens force them. I mean, they are not changed by innovation or by willing. At least this is my perspective in all countries, in all kind of countries that are very bureaucratic. Maybe the countries like Singapore, by Seoul or Taiwan, or that are more innovative or that are more open to innovative ideas, their bureaucracy wants to be in the top of the line. But we don't. I mean, our bureaucracy are very different from that. So I think that they are going to force this technology. It will force the bureaucracy. That will be my answer. I don't know if I answered correctly your question. Or
I think it is a very, very interesting thought. It can be further development into suggestion that we try to fight against the bureaucracy. Yeah, we say that it provides different I don't know, bad things, negative for people, yeah, like corruption, bureaucratization, and so on. But actually, if people themselves will bring the bureaucracy into their new metaverse, it will mean that they really need it. for their existence. And then we came back to Weber with its ideal type of governance. It can be a very interesting theoretical circle, I think. So
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm just going to add just a few lines. I mean, Weber and all this idea of critical routines and something that is sequence routines, it will increase with the technology in the metaverse, but using different technologies, different tools. But I don't think that we can escape so easily from the bureaucratic. I mean, it's going to happen anyway.
Well, yeah, let me say also some words. First of all, dear Rodrigo, thank you very much, as well as to your colleagues, for participating with us. It's very interesting and important to know what are you thinking about, what is your agenda. Today, you surprised me very much with such a topic. It's a big surprise. I wasn't expecting this. I could think of, like something like things connected with data governance, maybe big data, maybe some digital transformation issues, but that goes even far. And it's something very ambitious and very complex. And it's always understandable when academics start talking about this, being the first to talk about this because it needs to be developed. But of course, we're waiting for surprises from these big companies. And I understand that Facebook, calling himself Meta, is doing it not just for fun or not just to change the title. Probably there is something more in this, and they mean something, and they will also surprise us. I have several remarks. It's very hard to ask questions because, like, let me go through three remarks. The first one will be like, last year in 2021, we did applied project for President's administration where we discussed digital future. And they were asking us a question here. How you scientists, how you researchers predict and see digital future? What is the government futurism in general? How are we gonna look like in 10 years more? What's gonna be the key trends? What's being done by futurists? Those futurists work in many companies around the world. When we started doing this project, we found out that predictions are made in Google, in Facebook, in big government think tanks all over the world. There are special conferences about this. Big intergovernmental organizations do these projects and prognosis. What is fun? We did not mention in this project Meta Universe. We did not come to it. But we mentioned many other technologies, and we were more keen on technologies. But now I see the problem. When you divide the life, when you divide the development on technologies, you somehow narrow your vision, and you stopped having, like, when we were doing these projects, we were dividing it into some different technologies and trying to see how blockchain will be made in government, how big data will be made in government, what's going to happen in 2030. But we don't have this umbrella thing, which you are talking today. And probably this is very interesting. Another thing, another remark would be like this, that no one ever produced a research about the demand on this. And I don't know what goes first. First, the companies like Telegram, Facebook, or others will come up to us and say, look, guys, now you can be in Meta Universe. Please go in. And thus the companies will bring us in this ecosystem even harder. And then the government will usually say, look, if these people got used to being avatars in certain meta system, then why not to give them this meta presence in government? Or it will be different. The government would say, why do we need this? Like, can't we fulfill all we need to do for the citizens in more general way? I'm saying this because actually the funny thing happened with Meta government, with Meta Universe in Russia. The thing is that it happened in St. Petersburg. Part of the lab, including Anna and her students, they are in St. Petersburg. And part, including me and some of us, are in Moscow. So we work in 2 cities. So the civil servant in St. Petersburg, he come out to the public. I read this news with right the same idea, Rodrigo, that you said. He read it somewhere and he comes up and says, look, we need to make the government Meta Universe, you know, like in 2 years. Everything will be fun. You're gonna have avatars. The problem is that we need huge amount of money right now. So if you give it to us right now, we will do it. And then I understood that this was used here just as another, how to say, another proposal to find a lot of money at the same moment, you know, because we will not be sure if he builds a universe from scratch, but we're sure that he's going to use a lot of money, you know, for the projects in general. So where is the place to speculations? And where is the place for real deeds? It seems to me that you know, very often civil servants would like bureaucratically build things from scratch. They say, okay, you want Meta Universe, you give us a lot of money immediately, and we do it from scratch. We build you a special system, we build you space, we build you avatars, but we need like, I don't know, maybe $1 billion or something immediately, and then we do it. The problem is that there is no such a solution. No one will ever give that amount of money. And then we come to another interesting thing about the maturity. It seems like that Korean society, South Korean society is on a certain level of maturity, or I don't know, even higher than this. They are ready for this. The people should be ready for this, you know, and also they have this resource, and the government has the resource to support them in this. So it's a certain agreement in the society, in government. I doubt we have it in Russia. The problem is that if I do services well, I mean, if I get from government what I want, why do I need to have my avatar as well? Why is that important? Will it be used? If this is going to be used only by 10% of population, is that enough? Because it costs a lot of money. So we need to be sure somehow that it's going to be, you know, used. There will be high demand on such solutions. So it seems to me that my prognosis or my idea would be, I mean, I think it's a very interesting idea. I don't completely understand the outcomes immediately. I need to think about it because it's not clear where it goes. It has some limitless opportunities probably, but it seems that it goes out from private ecosystem. It seems like that the private companies should bring us to these ideas and show us the opportunities. Because, for example, in my country, I doubt that government will do a scale project in this direction right now. And I don't know for future, because again, it costs a lot. Maybe for small countries and small and rich countries, it's going to be easy. The last thing I'm saying about Meta Universe, this could be done only in the countries which are, I think, very independent and very developed in terms of technologies, because you need very strong developed private ecosystem and private IT companies, which provide defended borders for all this. Like, even if Facebook provides some Meta Universe typical project, it's not possible that Russia will adopt it. Will never use it. So it means that it has to be done by means of a national IT company or a consortium of companies. And this can happen only in the countries with a very developed IT solutions, a very high level integration between government and private companies. I doubt that government can create such a project from scratch. You need partnerships, but it's not possible these days, as you see the situation, not possible that, for example, Russian national government would partner with side foreign company and will do this. I mean, in our case, not possible. Maybe possible for Korea, maybe possible for Singapore, but in our case, not so much possible. So it has to be kind of a national IT product, national IT ecosystem. Maybe it will evolve slowly, and because it looks very interesting. And so I would mention some security issues, yes, because you have to keep the whole system controlled. It's a big, you know, when you create this, it's a threat for being hacked, for being, you know, for being used in some illegal purposes. Because it has to have some borders, it has to be protected ecosystem or something. It's not simple, and it needs a lot of efforts from national governments and a lot of money. And I mean, but of course, that's some of my thoughts about this from organizational perspective and practical implications. But seems very interesting. Probably one last thing I want to say about this is that the government has to know pretty clearly why it needs it for the society, what kind of society they want. They want interconnected society, they want inclusive society, they want democratic society, pluralistic one or not. So probably it's also about the values, And finally, I would remember the previous presentation by Edgar and Victor saying that what is ethical in this meta universe? Do we keep the ethics? We create a new ethics? Because too many things are possible in this new environment. Is it okay? I mean, how we deal with this? This is very questionable. So this could be my reaction, but again, very interesting. And I never knew you, Professor, you are thinking of meta universes for government. Very interesting discovery for me today. But I thank you so much for this conversation. We will record it, and we will definitely reflect this when we make a report about the conference. And I think this is very, very interesting end of our day here. By the way, it's a sunny day and very, very hot day here in Moscow in comparison with rainy day in Mexico. So that's what I think. If any other comments, or we need to finish because we are probably running out of time. But to finalize, again, I thank you guys for participation. It's very nice to see you, and that you spent some time for us and explained us your current ideas. As I said, we can think of potential collaboration. We're very open to it, but it's very important to find very concrete ideas and frameworks that we can use. And let's see how it goes. We have a second day, but I probably be not inviting you on the second day because it's in the morning here. So we would like you to have a good sleep tomorrow night. So it's strange to make you wake up, but we have some talks tomorrow as well. But we promise to send you links so you could see the presentations, maybe you could see the talks, and we hope could be of interest to you. With this, I thank you all for participation, for your time. We always stay in touch.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, Evgeny.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
I hope see you soon.
We see you.